Hello everybody, hope you're having an amazing day. Thank you for stopping by for my review of Pacific Rim Uprising. Now before I get into this, I just want to give a big thanks to Billsy and the crew from Radio Metro 105.7 for inviting me along to the premiere tonight. And if you want a radio station that plays nothing but great music and is run by an amazing crew of hot and sexy people, tune into 105.7. Once you do, just rip your tuning dial off from your car or wherever you listen to music and throw it away. You're not going to need it anymore. So Pacific Rim Uprising is the sequel to 2013's Pacific Rim that was directed by Guillermo del Toro. This time around it's written and directed by Stephen S. DeKnight, who is most notable for his work in TV, particularly shows like Buffy the Vampire Slayer, Smallville, and Daredevil. So this sequel takes place 10 years after the first one, where the kaiju were vanquished, big giant creatures that came up from another dimension, and the Jaeger program, which are these giant robots piloted by humans that we use to defeat the kaiju, it's kind of been retired because, you know, 10 years, nothing's really happened. Until a new threat emerges, which is kind of like the old threat, but with a bit of a twist. So the main character in this is Jake Pentecost, played by John Boyega, who is the son of Idris Elba's character from the first one. But he's nothing like his father. He's more of a con artist type when we first meet him, and he crosses paths with a young girl named Amara, played by Kaylee Spaney. So these two characters, they're kind of our main characters who get involved in the story, and my god, they were so enjoyable to watch. I mean, John Boyega is just fantastic. You probably know him mostly as Finn from Star Wars, and this guy is just so likable every time he's on screen. I don't know, this guy can just do no wrong. He's probably never going to win an Oscar, but he's good at what he does in just playing a likable, everyday kind of guy. But I gotta hand it to the young girl, Kaylee Spaney, who I hope I'm pronouncing her name right. She was fantastic. Every scene she was in, she was so enjoyable to watch, and she's the kind of actress who I definitely want to find out more of what she's done and follow her career. And the two of them worked so well together. They had really good chemistry that, you know, just kept the story moving. The film also had Scott Eastwood as kind of a military guy who clashes heads with John Boyega's character a little bit. And Bern Gorman and Charlie Day were also reprising their roles from the first one as the R&D development team / comic relief. Now, the first Pacific Rim was one of those movies that I liked, but I never really loved. It's the kind of movie that, while it's on, I can appreciate it, but I don't go out of my way to watch it. Whereas this time around, I actually thought the sequel was better, and the main reason being, this time around, it didn't take itself as seriously as the first one did. It had a much lighter tone to it. And I think that was largely because if you look at S. DeKnight's previous work in television, you know, he's done some fairly lighthearted stuff. And that translated really well to the big screen. There was some witty dialogue. The characters were kind of stereotypical, but he did kind of put a twist on them. For instance, when you take Scott Eastwood's character, like I said, you know, he's this kind of by-the-books military guy who, you know, he obviously clashes heads with Boyega's character, but yeah, there's a scene where the two of them kind of work out their differences very early on, and yeah, it was a bit different. But one thing this movie needed to be was a big screen spectacle, and largely it was, and the CG effects were absolutely amazing. They were absolutely flawless, and I really believed every giant robot that I was watching on screen, and they did something a little bit different this time, which was refreshing. It wasn't just the same thing of like, oh no, the monsters are back, you know, we better get these big robots to fight them. They did something, yeah, a little bit of a twist on it. In this case, we had robot versus robot. And I gotta say, the first fight that we see between robots was absolutely spectacular. See this movie on the biggest screen you possibly can. And it's a bit of a bonus for us Australian audiences because a lot of this film was filmed here. There were a lot of scenes filmed in Sydney, and there were some parts filmed right here on the Gold Coast. And you know, I almost actually applied for a crew role with this movie, but I just sort of figured, you know, just with everything going on in life, I just didn't have time for a Pacific Rim job right now. Yeah, I know. Yes, I have been waiting for this movie to come out so I can make that joke in this review. Okay, so back to being semi-serious. So look, while I enjoyed this movie, it did have its flaws, and again, it's not the sort of movie that I would rush to see again. There were some parts of the movie that were a bit bogged down in exposition. The characters, even though they were a little bit different, they were still sort of the same cookie cutter. You know, you got your group of recruits that are all hard asses and spout one-liners. You got your military leader who's very strict. I mean, these were all stereotypes that we've seen 100 times before in movies like Starship Troopers and other films. Yeah, but it wasn't too bad. But I think one of the biggest problems was towards the end, like the big major threat that they've got to overcome. I just didn't really feel like the stakes were all that high. It was more a case of like, okay, there's a big fight coming up, it'll be spectacular, and it was, but yeah, I don't know. I just felt maybe they could have really made the threat a little bit more threatening. So overall, look, I had a good time with this movie. If you like the first one, you're definitely gonna like this one. The movie featured some great performances, spectacular action sequences, and I'm gonna give Pacific Rim Uprising a 7.5 out of 10. So if you guys have seen Pacific Rim Uprising, let me know what you thought of it. Did you like it more than the first one? And again, a huge thanks to Radio Metro 105.7 for bringing us along to this preview screening. You guys absolutely rock. So let me know what you thought of Pacific Rim Uprising. Drop me some comments either here or on Facebook. All the social media links are in the description below, because I like to talk about movies and I would love to talk about movies with you. Catch you next time.
Click subscribe to stay up to date with all the latest movie reviews. Skynet will be taking over any day now, so what have you got to lose? Nyah.